Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. It's a session, it's a journey to turn inward, to look at the mind. Just look at it. Look is such a simple action, but it has been complicated by human beings in all kinds of ways. We talk about, we discuss, we imagine, we have all kinds of conceptual thinking. Such an easy action to look is becoming so difficult. It seems that we are losing this ability to perceive this world properly. We have gone too far in the thoughts, way too far. Everything has its place. Thoughts, language, image, whatever. There could be a place for them. But we rarely put them in place. We enjoy indulging ourselves in all kinds of ways. Everything is chaotic. Everything is out of order. Though that sort of order imposed by the authority, but order here in the mind, the order of the mind, the order of life, which is the holiness of it. When the life is purely dominated by the ego, by the self, there's no holiness. In the eyes of the ego, it is everything. It says nobody. When life has no holiness, no such an order of life, the mind, the life is rather meaningless, isn't it? All kinds of self-mischief, all kinds of egocentric stuff. No matter how beautiful it claims, it is really ugly. Have you seen this? The ugliness of the human nature. We rarely face it, right? We rarely look at it. We are really honest with ourselves. We are all dishonest in a very collective way. such a life, no matter how hard we try to beautify it, using verse, using poems, using all kinds of rhetorics, literature, novels, TV, movies. We try our best to sugarcoat it, but we can't really cover this truth. Such a life is a battle. It's a battlefield, which is full of incessant fight, contradictions, with some occasional flash of joy. We can't deny it because it's there. Such a life is everywhere. Such a life not only leads to the inner chaos, which is taking place now on every ego, every self on this planet, but it also creates the havoc on the outside world. Look at all kinds of nonsense taking place everywhere on this planet, from the politics, from the media. It's too much. Such an egocentric life is not only self-destructive, it is destroying everything. I hope you have seen it in your life. In your life, in people's life around you. Why to meditate? It's not some kind of a religious ceremony or practice to live what one called the spiritual life, or transcend oneself, all kinds of things, all the rest of it. To meditate is to see everything around you clearly, to see yourself inside clearly, to clear the confusion. The issues of this whole planet is the consequence of the confusing mind. From when a person is born, he's not confused, maybe only for a few weeks, days, or months. Then one began to grow up, starting this long journey of confusion. For most people, can be a very hard fact that this confusion continues for the lifetime. The best proof of this is the all kinds of escapes human beings have developed, created. Right? There are so many different types of escapes, entertainment, all kinds of things, amusing things, all kinds of big ego stuff. We have entered a very advanced technological world. Without techniques, we can't do this, right? We can't do this session online. But besides this advanced technical world, how about the inner world? Is that really in an advanced state or not? Have we really evolved from people living 2,000 years ago? When Buddha was there, Lao Tzu was there, Zhuangzi was there. Do we or have we really made progress psychologically or not? Or we are no different from people who are living 2,000 years ago? With a few awakening beings, most people are living in a confused way, with all the problems of the ego, anxiety, fear, aggression, greediness, enviness, all kinds of pettiness. It is really a marvelous sight to see this fact that we haven't changed at all in terms of nature of the mind. No, we have much more escapes than ever to not discuss about this, but probably also force more people to face this when they find the emptiness of all these kind of escapes, which only make life more complicated, more chaotic, more troublesome. Meditation is not an escape. It's not some kind of a thing we can do on an app to pay for this kind of subscription to make yourself happy. Meditation is a very rigorous investigation of the mind to see all these problems clearly. Such an investigation is very scientific, probably the most scientific stuff ever. Such an investigation is also philosophical, also probably the most philosophical stuff we could ever had. Such an investigation is also religious, probably is the most religious stuff we could ever had. But such an investigation has nothing to do with science, has nothing to do with philosophy, has nothing to do with religion. People who are doing science are not necessarily scientific. people who are doing philosophy are not necessarily philosophical. People who are doing religion are not necessarily religious. But if you do meditation in a serious way, you are scientific, you are philosophical, you are religious. So before we continue the exploration, let's keep silent for 3 or 4 minutes to empty the mind, to empty the self. You only belong to this moment. If the mind is away, you are not here. So invite your mind back to the body. This moment means that your body and the mind is always together. That's the only reality. That's the place where the truth can be found, can be touched upon. To meditate actually is the whole process of investigating the mind objectively. This requires a very quiet mind. If the mind were not quiet, the mind were full of reactions. In those reactions, it's difficult for one to observe the mind. That's also why it's so difficult for most people to face themselves. Only when one is free from the self-reaction, one can really look at the self. Just like I look at myself in the mirror without recognizing myself. Just look. When one is really into oneself, one is still selfish, egocentric. One can't really look at the self. All kinds of images, thoughts about the self, block one from seeing it, seeing the self as it is. Look at people living on this planet, so devilishly craving for respectability. Everybody wants to be a respected person. A person which is made up of a few beautiful words. And react to this terrible words, which we call it insult, and so on. In that life, one can't really see the self as it is, because one is seeing oneself through these words, through these labels, symbols. Those images, those thoughts. To look at oneself objectively, one has to deny the importance of thoughts. Absolutely, completely. Can you do that now? Deny the thoughts completely. When we ask, how can I live without thoughts? Pay attention to this question. It's not about the denial of thoughts creates the confusion. It's this question asked in this way creates the confusion. The mischief of the language. Deny the thoughts does not mean that you have no thoughts. This contradiction can only pop up when we try to verbalize it, when we think about it. When we are thinking about it, we are not observing it. This difference, which seems to be very subtle, but it is very important to the inner exploration. We tend to overuse the conceptual thinking, using all kinds of images, thoughts to visualize it. This overuse just drag somebody away from this inner exploration. To observe the mind, to understand the thoughts, one has to deny the thoughts first. If one is still thinks thoughts are very important, still keeps seeking pleasure from thoughts, which of course leads to all kinds of troubles and pains inevitably. In such a state, one can't really observe the thoughts. Just like everything one can observe, one have to deny it first to observe it. Or else the bias just comes in. That's why you see we are all biased, because we always observe something with a preference. Like a lot of the scientists are doing this experiment with the expectation of a positive result. It is already a bias, very fetal bias. But unfortunately, they can't say it. Unless they think inward to understand the mind. Biases are everywhere. It is only possible to be unbiased when one completely denies something. In that denial, the bias is gone. Then we can observe something objectively. Here, we observe the thought, the totality of the thoughts, the construct, the structure of the thoughts, thinking. You may find that this sort of investigation is super scientific. It allows for no biases. Any little bias here only lead one astray to some other tracks. No wonder this domain, which is called meditation or spirituality or whatever, is also full of distortions, problems, all kinds of tracks, mysteries or whatever, or the rest of it. It's a chaotic field, like any field on this planet, politics, media, whatever. Where there's a domain, there's a chaos. So this objective observance of the mind means one has to empty the consciousness. One has to work out the self to observe the mind. What does it mean? It means there is an observance, but there's no observer. There's only observance. There's only watching. There's no watchers. Thoughts has their place. Only when they are only thoughts, they are no thinkers. That's the right place for the thoughts to stay. So, when we describe meditation in this way, it's very simple. Right? Just look at the mind objectively. But in practice, this requires us a huge amount of meditation to quieten the mind. You know how the mind is chaotic. I think everybody knows it. Right? So, to observe this mind objectively, one has to be alone, totally alone. You can't rely on anybody else to tell you what is, unless you can discover it for yourself. As we said before, any kind of verbal communication may help one to know direction. But that's what the language can do. It is up to everybody themselves to go into it, to investigate. Without being influenced by anybody, any authority. What is authority? Somebody else, some book, some guru, whatever, tell you what you should do, what you should not do. This authority is obvious, destructive. Right? I guess you think it's right, right? But there are also the inner authorities. What is that? What is the inner authorities? Your knowledge. What you have known about you, about this field. Your past experience. Can you investigate the mind without these authorities at all? If you are still with these inner authorities, like your past experience, you are not alone. You're still with something. Can you be really alone? To look at the mind in this way. Empty your consciousness. Your experience, your knowledge is always working in the consciousness. Can you empty that totally? Don't answer yes or no. Do it by yourself. Try it to see it, because you are doing an experiment. Your mind is your experiment. You can't know it. You can't understand it until you do it. So, we have covered a lot today about the topic of the investigation of the mind. This is a serious way to investigate the mind. We can start this journey together, no matter where you are. If you are eager to understand the mind, eager to live a peaceful, joyful, meaningful, compassionate life, we can start this journey anywhere. No matter where you are, as long as we are turning inward, we are always meeting each other. Probably each of us had a lot of friends nearby, around your home, around your house, around your living environment. But we all know that people are isolated by thoughts, isolated by all kinds of illusions, mental images. Just like this world, economically, politically, people are so divided by each other, by all kinds of views. If people can't turn inward to understand what's going on, what's wrong with the mind, these things will go on forever. People are drifting apart further and further. All kinds of mental challenges pop up, right? Loneliness, depression, isolation, all the rest of it. To reconnect the human beings, if only when I really turns inward, that's the only possibility. You can't use any rhetorics, you can't use any propaganda to connect people. The only way is when everyone on this planet begins this inner journey to understand the self, to put everything in place, to understand what does human being mean. Then there's a possibility to reconnect. But now, for you and me, on this journey of exploration, as long as we turn inward, we will meet each other. Because this nature mind, how the mind works, it is shared by everyone on this planet, no matter which language you speak, which culture you are living in. They are all superficial stuff. When you are clear, when the clarity is with you, you won't be blocked by all this superficial stuff, all this confusing stuff. Or in other words, it is only possible for people with clarity can really connect each other. All kinds of communities which seem to be connected by some kind of thoughts, ideologies, or whatever, is only the reflection of the inner seeking of security. That's not a connection at all. So now it's time for us to meditate, to empty the mind. It is important to have this discussion with you guys, to look at the mind, but they are all on the verbal level. It's important to drop all the words, all the symbols, to look at it by yourself. That's why we still need to meditate. No matter which method you are using, is to empty the mind, all the symbols, all the languages, all the words, all the images, to come back to a state of being alone. Don't forget, alone means all one. Now, let's take a 10-minute meditation. Start by taking a moment to find a comfortable position to sit in a posture that you feel relaxed and get alert. Let hands rest on your knees or laps. Let the eyes close gently. Soften your forehead. Act a soft smile in the corner of your lips. Breathe naturally. As you breathe in, be aware that you are breathing in. Feel the sensation of breathing in. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. As you breathe out, be aware that you are breathing out. Feel the sensation of breathing out. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. Fix your attention on the breath. Let go of any thought, words, images. This moment, nothing is more important than breath. while you are listening to the bell. Check where your attention is. If it wasn't on the breath, after the bell, gently invite your attention back to the breath and sustain your attention on the breath. Slowly bring your awareness back to this room. Feel into your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes. When you are ready, open your eyes. Hopefully everybody has come down somewhat after this 10-minute meditation. It is really up to you to bring this practice to your life. No matter how busy you are outside, can you keep your mind not being polluted by all the things around you? Such a life never demands challenge, because such a life is a challenge, isn't it? So now we still have some time left. And if you like to ask some questions or speak or something, yeah, it's time.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I wanted to ask, like, do you always manage to maintain this state of mind?
If you prioritize this over everything, when you really see the fallacy of life, the fallacy of this chaotic life, all the issues, all the problems, the danger of the self, the danger of the ego. How can
Thank
one
you.
be free from this motivation to do this, right? To see the urgency to change. And then when you see that, you will know why we do that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hello.
Um, can I ask, the ego is part of ourselves as well, isn't it? It is part of us.
I guess it's come from the confusion of the verse we use to describe the self, the ego, and people have put so much energy to try to differentiate these two verses. I think it's a waste of energy. So when we really look at it, what's the difference between the self, the ego? Really any big differences? So let's put aside this kind of subtle meanings of this the self and the ego, which might just give us more confusion than clarity. What is the self? Isn't it a bunch of images, thoughts about yourself? the name, the age, the social status, the position, the title, certificate, or whatever. We do exist for the whole being, for this body, right? It is undoubtful. But why do we hold on to this concept on the mind? Why do we have this kind of a psychological concept about the self, which is the self or the ego, no matter what you call it? Why do we make it exist psychologically? So that's the things we need to investigate. This physical body do exist. I don't deny it. We don't deny it. You don't deny it because it's there. But why there's another self here? And all the mischief, all the issues, all the havoc is being created by the self here, the disorder.
And the one who does the investigation, who is the scientist, as you said?
As we said before, there's only observance. There's only investigation. But there's no observer. There's no investigator.
So it's not,
It's something we need to explore. You can't think about that. You can't imagine it because it's unimaginable. When you imagine it, you are the imaginator. But there's no imaginator. Right? So you can't think about that. If you think about that, you are the thinker. You can only feel it, observe it. It sounds subtle, no, but if you really go into it, you will find how drastic the difference is here between the self, between this and that, between the thinker and the non-thinker, between the investigator and non-investigator. Can the mind function in a way there's no self, there's no observer, there's no thinker? That's the question we need to really inquire into. Not of wide thoughts, but to turn inward, to just observe it, to just feel it. I had to admit that languages are so powerless. Probably the more I speak about that, the more confusion it will create to you.
I think I understand what you mean.
That's perfect. So also since last week, we wrote out this course. I think we have received a few applications from Katerina, Ari, and Anna. So probably this course probably start in 1 or 2 weeks. Let's wait let's wait 1 or 2 weeks to see who else will join. And also in 2021, so Mandiverse will run as a non-profit foundation to try to reach more people. And probably so if you are interested in working together, on a volunteer basis, like you can also reach Mandiverse we can discuss the possibilities to do something for fun, and also something to can really bring the clarity to more people. And that's the how this stuff can go, and how far it can go. Great. I think if there's no more questions from you guys, no, right? No questions? If this is the case, and that's the end of today's session. Really a pleasure to stay with you guys to explore this topic together. It is up to you, to everybody themselves, to discover it, because here we have nothing new to share. You are learning nothing from this speaker. You're only learning yourself by yourself.
Thank you very much, Siku.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
And also, thank you for everybody being here tonight. Have a good day. Enjoy each moment. Then keep up the practice. Do it in your life. And that's your life. That's the life. And take care. And see you hopefully in the future sessions.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.